Welcome to Trending in Education. This is Mike Palmer. Today, we're going to dig into Mary Meeker's latest report. She's at Bond Capital and had been pretty quiet of late. For those who follow this show know I'm a big fan of Mary Meeker's Internet Trends Report, which used to come out each year, and she would outline what's been happening in the internet. She did that right up through 2019. But since has been pretty quiet on the reporting side until now. She released a report with Bond called AI and Universities Will Masters of Learning Master New Learnings. I'm going to read through it here. You could also click through the slides. There are about 17 slides to look at. She starts by showing the biggest companies in the world, global market capitalization leaders, over 500 billion, pointing out that 14 of the 17 biggest market cap companies out there are American-based. The top 10 are in order as follows: Microsoft, Apple, NVIDIA, Alphabet, Amazon, Saudi Aramco, Meta, Taiwan Semiconductors, Berkshire Hathaway, and Eli Lilly. This is mainly a slide to reframe the current capitalization out there and to remind folks that the U.S. technology and the private sector is certainly leading in interesting ways. And I think that's useful framing. I've also heard folks talk about the big seven, which would be Microsoft, Apple, NVIDIA, Alphabet, Amazon, Meta, and Tesla. On the second slide, she shares how digital platform ramps to 100 million users have been accelerating over the past 2 decades. Netflix took 10 years or so to get to 100 million users. LinkedIn, Pinterest, all took years. Instagram took a little over 2 years. Then you look at Disney Plus, Fortnite, and TikTok. Those were all getting to 100 million users within about a year or less. And then comes along ChatGPT, and within a few months, it reached 100 million users, really reminding folks that that is the instigator of the AI hype cycle that we're in right now. The fact that that massive adoption happened really hadn't been seen before. What does that ultimately mean? Well, we're kind of living in some of that right now. We'll talk more about that a little bit later on. Next slide, she talks about machine learning models and how the U.S. leads in the Stanford AI Index report significantly. So notable machine learning models by country: U.S. at 61, China at 15, France 8, Germany 5, Canada 4. U.S. clearly in the lead in terms of machine learning. Also, a lot of it geographically is centered in the U.S. It's also centered in Silicon Valley. So AI private investment, U.S. leads 67 billion in the U.S., followed by China, UK, Germany, all under 10 billion. Then she shows NVIDIA's sharp increase over the last few months, really. If you look at where NVIDIA was a year ago versus where they are now, 4 times year over year growth of revenue, reaching 23 billion so far in Q2 of 2024. And then NVIDIA's compute power also showing this hockey stick kind of growth. There's a couple of hockey sticks in here. Both of them involve NVIDIA. First, its revenue, and then its compute power. This also does kind of align to Moore's Law in some ways, but it is interesting showing the Blackwell chip and how much more processing power it has. Then we get into a quick graphic on Google Search, where it looks like Google Search has now exceeded one search per human per day from 26 years ago. So now we're seeing over 8 billion Google searches per day. Clearly, not everyone is searching the same number of times, but that does net out to an average of 1 per human per day, going up from a little over 3 billion searches per day 10 years ago. Then post-COVID, she gets into some of the education players, some of the bigger players that are out there. Coursera now has over 140 million registered online users, a 4x growth since COVID began. So again, one of these hockey stick style charts. Same thing for Duolingo in terms of monthly active users, over 3x growth since COVID. Then she dedicates a couple of slides to talking about the most common USA creator platforms. This is speaking again to the rising generation. Which content platforms do you regularly use to publish your own content? And there's a bar chart here showing the percentage of content creators who use these platforms in descending order from about 70% to inside of 10%. They are YouTube, Meta, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, Twitch, podcasts, Reddit, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Telegram, SoundCloud, Slack, Medium, and Substack. Again, you can look at the bar charts if you go to bondcap.com/reports. You can find the AI in higher ed report there. The main reasons why you're a content creator range from it's a hobby to a creative outlet, a way to make money, a way to grow as an individual, flexible hours like the independence, raise awareness of causes. She then gets into how student loans are rising faster than other household debt over the past 2 decades. So student loans as of 2023 are 33% of total debt. That's up 6.3%, a bigger increase than the other categories, other credit cards and auto loans. So other than household debt, the biggest debts that are out there involve student loans, which is concerning. And then mirroring that concern about debt, there is a slide here about the US's net debt to GDP ratio and how it really spiked back in World War II, and it is going pretty high again, higher than projected. So there's some concerns around debts of different kinds. And then the other area of concern is really around the PISA assessment, which was run in 2000, 2012, and 2022 across math, science, and reading. US dropped significantly from 2000 to 2012. They dropped across all 3 categories into 2012. And then from 2012 into 2022, we did bounce back a bit in mathematics, going from 36th to 34th. And then in science, we saw a more significant increase from 28th to 16th. And then lastly, in reading, we went from 24th up to 9th. So again, concerning in that we're not the exceptional shining city on a hill. In many ways, that is Singapore, which is first across these categories. You also see Japan, South Korea, Estonia, Ireland, Taiwan, all showing up here in different ways. It is interesting to kind of see how our neighbors are doing. Canada outperforming the US in all 3 categories, Canada in the top 10 in all 3. So it is interesting as the Olympics are coming, where the US medal count will be off the charts. Unfortunately, in PISA, not only did we not medal, in the case of mathematics, we're not even in the top 20. That said, there is some growth versus where we were in 2012, and that's coming, right in the middle of learning loss from the pandemic. So this was in 2022 when the PISA was last run. So while the scores are concerning, it's also relative to others as opposed to ourselves. If you do look at individual growth, does look like there was some rebounding, although it's tough when you're measured just against other countries. It's hard to tell whether you're actually improving or is the world falling behind. The headline here is on PISA is that our K-12 is certainly not the envy of the world, although maybe there's a little bouncing back. And I would say our reading results being number 9 is a nice improvement, and it's a place where there's perhaps some positive signs. Science at 16 and math at 34. So math education is a theme I've been hearing a little bit more about, and this kind of explains why. It does seem like there's some real challenges out there, and it's something that we're going to need to keep our eye on. Then she gets into Gen AI core capabilities per Morgan Stanley. And the general gist of it is that the core capabilities are getting, organizing, processing, interpreting information, and thinking creatively. So those are the capabilities that Gen AI is strong at. I've been thinking about this in two ways. One is the idea of complementary intelligence. That's complementary with an E. Where can AI be stronger than us so that in tandem we're better? So, where can we sort of fill each other's weaknesses out to some extent? I think that's one lens. And then the other is, can we be multiplicative or exponential in how we interact with each other? And that's where I'm hoping, at least I'm thinking creatively. I have found AI to be an interesting thought partner and a helpful one when I'm working on something on my own and I don't have access to other people. But it's an interesting one to keep an eye on. They did cite Morgan Stanley's research as of June 2024. And then the last slide in the exhibit section is foundation models by sector as of 2023. Industry leading higher ed significantly, and this is per Stanford's AI Index report. Academia is at 28 foundation models of AI, while the private sector industry is at 108. And then there's a few different types of collaborations between industry and academia, industry and government, and a little bit of work that the government is doing on its own. So I'd say, taking a step back, I would view this as almost a provocation to higher ed to get into the fray more and to do its best to keep up with industry so that, we can continue to advance together. It's also a little sobering when you think about the level of education that is reaching U.S. students in K-12. Are they ready for their post-secondary lives? And then once they enter into that post-secondary life, how ready is higher ed to give them the skills and the insights and relevant work experience they're going to need to be successful on the other side? Although it is nice, I guess, in terms of the global stage, that the U.S. does seem to be leading when it comes to industry as it relates to AI. And in that sense, riding this wave, even if it is heading into a bit of a hype cycle, the US is doing well in terms of its positioning economically on the private sector side. So I think that's useful perspective, really heading into any analysis of higher ed, any analysis of AI and education. And I was really happy to see Mary back. She would be a dream guest at some point to get on Trending in Ed. From there, I wanted to talk about a few trends that we've outlined here. We'll pick up with that next. So much to dig into in the Meeker report. It's nice in that it really tightens your focus and helps you understand the big picture perspective on what's happening in a space. Prior to discovering that Mary Meeker had a new report out, I was planning to talk about three trends as the focus of today's show. The first of which was Gen AI reaches peak hype cycle. The peak of inflated expectations has hit, and in some places we're now descending into the trough of disillusionment. Second trend, right in line with what Mary was talking about, is post-secondary disruption, whether it's the companies we've talked to, Tade Oyerinde at Campus, Matt Wilkerson at Extern, or Joel Podolny at Honor Education, just to name a few. All of those folks have been on the show. We've had really interesting conversations about the work that they're doing, ways in which technology can perhaps transform the way higher ed reaches people and reaches people in need. That then is intersecting now with this new wave of artificial intelligence. Interesting that Mary Meeker focused there. Certainly a place that we've been looking at how higher ed can change. And then there were conversations that also came to mind with Brian Rosenberg, Brandon Bastide, and most recently Dan Porterfield, all about how culturally higher ed is transforming and how folks' relationship with it, folks' trust of institutions, and really folks questioning the economic viability of the more traditional higher ed pathway. Higher ed is really in a difficult spot. And I think the question is, where do you look for solutions? Where do you look for motivation? How do you instill the fire in the belly in higher ed to really keep up with the innovation and perhaps dangerous activity that could emerge out of the private sector, particularly if government is diminished and higher ed is slow to catch up? And then last but not least was really a trend about durable skills versus AI fatigue. And that's the real truth, that we all see AI so much. Chatbots are becoming the pop-up ads of the 2020s. It's just invasive. It's not always adding value. At times you feel like you're moving backwards rather than forwards with this technology. One of the trends that we talked about earlier this year was coined by Cory Doctorow, which is enshittification. Ever since I discovered that idea, I've been seeing it everywhere, certainly seeing it in some of the product innovation and product marketing that's happening, where folks have to show you that the AI is working rather than just have it work quietly behind the scenes. It's an intriguing time. I do think we're about to head into that trough, but it's certainly a time where we'll be sharing what we know, talking to folks who are emerging with interesting concepts, interesting ideas. We'll include links to many of those shows and the Meeker Report, of course, in the show notes to this episode. Thanks so much for listening. We're to keep this one short and sweet. Let me know where you think we should go next over the summer. I have some interviews lined up, and I'm always curious where folks are finding their information, what, like Mary Meeker, is out there that we should be keeping track of, breaking down, and talking to others about here on Trending in Education. Make sure to write us reviews, tell your friends, subscribe, reach out if you want to be on, reach out if you have questions. We'll try to bring that into upcoming episodes. We're back. We're humming along here in the summer. This is Mike Palmer signing off for Trending in Education.